Hi, everyone. So I know a number of you, but my name is Leah Parkhill Riley. I am the practice lead for coaching here at the Roundtable, and I'm also an executive coach here. And I would like to welcome you all to our webinar, Beyond Firefighting, How to Lead Your Team When the Pressure is On. So we know so many of you might feel like you're spending your days working in the work of the team without the time to work on the team. And so today, Glain and Liane, we'll be connecting the dots to that feeling, to insights from our 2026 Roundtable report on high potential leaders, as well as Liane's upcoming book, Thought Load. So I'd like to run through just a few items so we can then move ourselves over into the meat of the conversation. So just the next slide, whoever is running this slide, there we go. So at the Roundtable, we are committed to making an impact. And as part of our own commitment to ongoing reconciliation, we have partnered with Inspire. Inspire is a national Indigenous registered charity that invests in the education of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people for the long-term benefit of those individuals, families, and communities. And to honor the legacy of Kamloops 2015 or 215, we're striving to provide 215 university scholarships over the next 5 years. If you'd like to learn more or make a donation to help us achieve that goal, you can contact our info email that is on the slide. I'd like to now respectfully acknowledge that in Toronto, we are on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat people. And Toronto is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people, and I invite you to acknowledge the land on which you currently reside. So, few housekeeping items. As this is a webinar, your cameras are off and your mics are muted, but we really want you to keep up the interactivity. You'll notice that there is a chat and QA function, and we will be monitoring it. Glain is great at taking a peek at that and peppering in questions throughout the call. And it's really what helps us make it interactive. So please definitely feel free to chime in with thoughts and questions throughout. We are also recording today's webinar, so you'll receive an email link with that recording. Okay, so for those who are new to us at the Roundtable, we're a company that helps organizations move beyond the individual leader to those hero leaders that are working through the trenches to really optimizing and building the collective leaders, teams, and cultures to step into what we call unleashing collective impact. The methods that we use to move into collective impact is group coaching, team coaching, and one-to-one. Happy to chat about that further. If you're curious, you can use that info email to get it started. And so really, that's all from me, but I do want to welcome our distinguished guest, Dr. Liane Davey, who is a best-selling author and team effectiveness expert, and is joining Glain, who is the founder and president of the Roundtable, for a very frank and practical conversation today. And might I say, probably highly entertaining. So without further ado, Glain and Liane, over to you.
Thank you. And just in case you don't know me, I'm Glain. I'm the founder of the Roundtable and started it about close to 20 years ago. We had our 18th anniversary last year. And it was really because I wanted to have conversations that really matter about leadership. Like what is it really like to be leading in the day to day. And I love every time I get to talk to Liane because Liane is such a thought leader in so many areas. And, in our team coaching practice, she's actually our partner in our team coaching practice. We use a lot of her great tools and frameworks to help teams move forward. So I'm thrilled to be here with you again. This is not our first rodeo, is it?
Not our first rodeo.
You. So as Leah said,
but just so you know, in the rodeo metaphor, we're the clowns, not the people on the bulls.
Oh boy. On that note, we do have a lot of fun with it. I think one of the things that I love about Liane is that does really serious work, but doesn't take herself too seriously. And I think that's the thing, with leadership. It's I always feel like in leadership we take often 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, and you've got to learn to kind of not laugh at yourself, but to really kind of go, okay, let me give myself some grace here and permission. We're always learning as leaders, and we're always sort of growing together. And so thrilled to have you here. And I wanted to, yeah, I mean, and those of you, if you haven't been exposed to Liane's work, go and check. She's got her own website. She's one of these famous people who has her own website, lianedavey.com. You can go and check out all the work she does do. But when Liane and I were chatting last year, you were just starting to talk about your new book that you've been writing. And I love this book, and the topic and where you're going with it. And we were kind of joking around this morning about it, this idea of thought load. So I would love you to share with the group just what's thought load, why are you writing this book now? And yeah, tell us a little bit about this.
I guess where it all started was just me. I work directly with a lot of clients all the time. And as I would be on a plane home for an offsite, talking with my husband and business partner, Craig, I just came to this conclusion: work isn't working. Like it's not working for our bottom lines. It's certainly not working for our health or our enjoyment of life. Work isn't working. But when I listen to folks, mostly what they're paying attention to is the workload. They're like, oh, the workload's so high.
Yeah.
And as I watch what's kind of coming out of the sausage factory, it's not much sausage. And I say, well, I don't think it is actually the workload that's the problem. I think it's the thought load that's the problem. And most people that I work with, they say, I would love to do the work. Like the work is interesting, challenging, meaningful. But if I look at how many hours a week I'm actually doing the work, it's really not enough. I was on a podcast with a host in Italy, and I was trying to suck up to this European guy. I was like, well, it's a little bit like football. And as soon as I said football, he knew I'd be thinking about NFL type of football or CFL type football. And I said, it's the difference between NFL football and FIFA football, your kind of football. I said, if you go to a soccer match, a FIFA match, they play for 90 minutes. The ball is moving mostly for 90 minutes. If the ball stops moving, they add time on to the end to make sure you don't get cheated of any forward movement of the ball. If you go to an NFL game, the NFL game is, an hour, but it takes like 4 hours to watch it, to play it. It's just a huge amount of stuff going on. You know how many minutes the ball is in action in the 4 hours you're watching an NFL game? 12 minutes.
Really?
Yeah. So I feel like that's the difference between workload and thought load. How much of the time is the ball moving? And how much of the time is there all this other falderall that you're doing? Yeah. So I think our work has become like NFL football. There's a lot of time at the stadium.
Yeah.
The ball is not in motion very much. So I started paying attention to this, the difference between workload and thought load. And then as I started, as the psychologist in me, to start to peel apart what is thought load, 3 things. It is all the cognitive demands. Yeah. All that we're expected to pay attention to. And we can talk stats about how insane it is. Average North American employee toggles between screens 1,200 times a day. That means 3 hours. 1,200 times a day between different screens, between different systems. I'm going to email, I'm going to my phone at 1,200. So even if you only have 2 seconds per switch, 3 hours a week where you're the chief toggle officer of your company, nothing else. Average person goes 11 minutes without an interruption and only returns to the task 25 minutes later, which means that even your interruption was interrupted. This means every day is take your kid to work day. How many times a day is your family interrupting your focus? So that's cognitive demands. And if it was just that, we might have a shot. The thought load is also the emotional burdens. So we are living in an emotionally dysregulated society. We are triggered a huge amount of the time. We're triggered by the news that we read this morning with our morning coffee. We're triggered by the road rate. Oh God, triggered by the traffic today. Anybody trying to make the commute today, I'm sure it's very triggering.
I was highly triggered today looking out the window.
And then as humans, we're susceptible to emotional contagion. So it doesn't have to be us who's triggered. Somebody around us who's triggered all of a sudden sets off us off as well. So that's the top of the thought load equation, the weight of the cognitive demands and the emotional burdens. Now, any load is a factor of the strength you have to carry it, right? So the third piece is your energy reserves. And our energy reserves are in the crapper, right? We're burned out, we're exhausted for a whole bunch of reasons. So thought load is this treacherous triad of the cognitive demands, the emotional burdens, and the depleted energy reserves that we're all facing. So this just felt like the issue of our time. And so as I think about it, one thing I would say is the way I want to think about it is, if you think about it, in the old days, we always talked about IQ. And everything about success in the work was like, how high is their IQ? Let's get, and at some point we realized that's important, but this EQ thing is kind of way more important. I think it's the same with workload and thought load. It's not that workload doesn't matter. It does, but we're going to come to appreciate that thought load is actually much more predictive of our productivity, our stress, everything else. So that's thought load.
Holy, okay, so much to kind of dive into there. And what I'm connecting the dots to is like, so we did our annual report on the state of mind of high potential leaders. And, for years, I've always said to people, I hate the labeling. I hate labeling, period, right? Like, I'm not a big labeler. And yet, an organization, so well, high potentials and high performers and da-da. But I've always sort of felt about that group that get classified in organizations as high potentials as, you know what, they're just wired a little differently. And for years, spending time very much embedded in that group of kind of employees, you just see a mindset that's, it's sort of a blessing and a curse mindset, right? And so I'm curious your perspective on this, because one of the big things that came out of a report was that 45% of people that we surveyed felt that they were spending most of their time firefighting. Like, they were firefighting. And I'm curious your perspective on this, like how much of firefighting is coming from external demands versus an internal way we think and our patterns and of our drives. Like, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I'd say it's a pretty even split. So there is a huge amount coming from external. So I'm really finding, I'm working in a client right now where they have an activist shareholder at the moment.
Right.
And this guy is torching everything in sight. He's got Molotov cocktails he's throwing into the organization. So I don't want to blame my clients for being in firefighting mode. If you have an activist shareholder who has that much power over you, you kind of have to leave everything and tamp out the flames, right? I get it. But the problem is, half of it is coming from our own, we're dysregulated. And so we're seeking out the distraction. We're seeking out the urgent thing we can jump on. And I think what's not new is leaders perennially understanding how to add value at a more junior level. And that's where they feel and know and are confident and certain how to add value. So they go and do that stuff because it gives them an instant gratification. That's not a new issue. So some firefighting is kind of like, but it feels good. I put out the fire. See,
I can be the dependable one that pushes that over the line.
Yeah. So I think it's really some of both. And we have to kind of respect and understand both pieces if we're going to solve it.
Yeah, I will say, like, I find that there is, certain people have this very kind of, like, the internal narrative, right, is very overwhelming around following through on promises, achieving, not letting people down. We label it people pleasing, or I hear people say it, that they label themselves as having imposter syndrome, and so they're constantly feeling like they're failing, so therefore they have to do that. And then I think, well, then we start layering. So if you're kind of wired that way naturally, and then on top of that, you've got, as you're pointing out, all these external things like tariffs, you name it. Like, if you're facing things like that are coming into your industry, and then let's layer in life, right? Aging parents, kids that are going through, I've got a number of clients whose kids coming out of COVID. This has not been a good situation for a lot of young people. Right. And so, and a lot of the burden starts falling, and I'm gonna label it gender, but onto women, right? In work. So we're carrying all of this piece. I love your sort of cognitive, emotional, right, and the energies or reserves that we have, that I think for a lot of people were already very depleted coming out of 2020, 2022.
Yeah. It's funny, right? Like, yesterday I had a crazy long day. I had this amazing call from 8 to 9:30 because my speaking coach is in Barcelona. So you start early because that's it, right?
Yeah.
And then we went all the way through, and I literally had like 2 half-hour slots in my whole day, including a work dinner. I got home from the dinner, and my daughter has a big job interview coming up. And literally, I'm home for dinner, and from dinner at like 10 o'clock, I'm helping her with prepare for her interview. Right.
Yeah.
So thought load is not just about work, because there's
Yeah.
no boundary for most of us between. So I think
Yeah.
about like my dad, when I was growing up, he was an entrepreneur, and he had this little cube van, and he would go around to different florists selling stuff. There was no way to reach him during the day.
Right.
That wasn't a
Right.
thing.
Yeah.
Just
No.
like, so there was no interruption for him of a stressed out kid in the middle of his day. And now, like, a day doesn't go by that I don't get a text from my kids at some point in the day.
Yeah.
Thankfully, these days, mostly they're positive and happy ones, but not always.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm freaking out about my economics exam or whatever, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, thinking about thought load as just about work makes no
Yeah.
sense, because
No, it is this emotional burden that you carry. And I think for a lot of leaders, yes, you have your job. And I think like you make me think a lot about how we've been really we've been doing a couple of things in organizations, right? We've been putting more work into managers' jobs. So
yeah,
you're like back in the day where you could be the directing manager. I mean, I don't know anybody who does that. Like even at the CEO level, people are having to roll up their sleeves and really get involved in a lot of like the nitty gritty of running the business, especially again, going back to big external factors.
yeah,
If you're a CEO, you're not stepping out and going, okay, can you guys figure out what we're going to do about this 70% increase because of tariffs, right? Or decrease in revenue because of tariffs.
yeah.
You're in
I'm
there
gonna
in
hit
the
the
weeds.
beach. You guys let me know what you figure
Yeah, yeah.
out.
You let me know. Like just call it in. Oh man, I would love to have those days, right? So we've had that happen. So we've got managers that no longer really have that bandwidth to do that because they've got so much thing. And then on top of their work then that they have to do,
Yeah,
they are thinking about how each of the members of their team is feeling, how all
right.
things. And then on top of that, we're getting into this matrix where you're collaborating and you have to work across and you have to do all of these kinds of things. So really sort of, I think a very kind of stressful time, but also it makes me think, yeah, you know what is the snapping point around all of this? And what can we do about it? Because it's not going to change. Like, I don't think it's not like all of a sudden we're going to go, okay, let's, let's kind of create more middle management. Like, I think we're really at this stage now where we've got it to your point where you started. It's not working. So what do we have to think differently? And how do we need to, as leaders, think differently about how we're showing up? So what would you sort of share as a way for us to start breaking this down and start maybe
Yeah,
rebalancing our thought load?
yeah, absolutely. So I would say, like, I'm angry at senior leaders, like executives, right? I'm angry. I've reached the point of like, this is crap, because I think they look at people as if their overwhelm is a personal failing.
Right. Oh,
And
is
I
that
would
the truth?
say overwhelm today is a systemic inevitability.
Mm,
The way so every CEO who allows the company to roll out 7 priorities with none higher than the other, like,
yeah.
what are you doing? What are you doing? Right?
Yeah.
Every leader who's let Slack run amok in their company, so that people are literally becoming neurotic because things
Mm,
are binging and so I'm angry at leaders. So if you think about the leaders in the middle, like not the
sure.
executives, but the leaders in the middle who have to survive in this, and who
Yeah.
have this horrible job of being shock absorbers in the
Yeah.
system, between leaders who are undisciplined and unwilling to say anything comes second to anything
Yeah.
else, and between them and their teams who are just collapsing under the weight. And I would say matrix organizations and cross-functional collaboration aren't scaling, and
No.
they're imploding under their own weight, and we're kind of crushed under the beams. And so what do we have to do? So first, we have to focus distracted attention. So
Mm,
we absolutely. And the first thing to do is to get clear on what matters most. So if you run a team, being clear with your team about what's the quest you're on and how do we make that a noble quest that's the most important value the organization and its stakeholders are counting on us to deliver. And then to have really hard conversations about what are other teams' quests that they need our help on, and how are we going to help, and how much are we willing to dedicate to that. And then third, what are the side quests? Because if you're part of an organization, you got side quests, compliance, training, regulatory, like there's side quests. And how, as a leader or as a manager, I'm going to say, how do I make sure my team always understands what's our single most important quest? What are the other quests in the organization we are going to contribute to, and with what scoping, with what boundaries? And then what are the side quests, and how do we put them in order and do as many as we can? So that's the first thing, because I think I talk about it as you can pay attention to activities, you can pay attention to outputs, or you can pay attention to outcomes. Too many of our managers are paying attention to activities, and all you get if you pay attention to activity is busy people. Some are making the switch to paying attention to outputs. And if you pay attention to outputs, you get productive people. And I think most of us are stuck in a productivity trap. Like, oh, look, my team is sending out a lot of reports. We've done a lot of events, had many customer meetings. And they are not stopping to look at, are any of those things driving the outcomes, moving the needle on the things we need. Only when you pay attention to outcomes, the quest you're on, do you get effective people. And only when you pay attention to outcomes can you start to say, this output is driving nothing. We don't need the activities to create this output anymore. There's a lot of stuff we can stop doing. So that's really the first most important thing. The book goes through then how do we actually align our time and energy with our quest, other important quests and side quests? How do we get our actual work week? Because mostly when I say to people, okay, now tell me, open your calendar and show me all the things on your quest, all the activities and outputs to drive your quest. Where are they? Like, do they show in the 9 to 5 slot in your Outlook calendar? You have to scroll to a weekend or a night. And most people are like, oh yeah, I do that. I do the important work on Saturday. Like, what? So that's the starting point. That's the cognitive piece.
How good do you think people are, though, at really understanding, and especially in the middle, really understanding what the outcomes are that they should be driving towards? What's been your experience with that?
Well, because they're not getting it from above.
Right.
I find executive teams are decent at that. They kind of understand the outcomes, because at some level it's kind of easy at the executive team level. But then what happens is we cascade, and as we move to the first layer of cascade, we lose outcomes and we start talking about outputs. So marketing is like, well, we're going to deliver this brand campaign and this and this and this, and all of a sudden we're into outputs. And if you look one layer down, all of a sudden those outputs make no sense together. And if you go 3 layers down, you've lost all connection to all connection to the outcome. So my big thing is in our goal cascading processes, and if you're in this process at the start of the year right now, cascade outcomes so there was alignment in outcomes. Don't just cascade outputs.
Right.
And so that's, I think, so I tend not to blame execs for not being so good at defining outcomes. It's the next layers that lose touch with those. Get to just, well, this is what we're going to do. This is my SMART objective. Smart objectives are so often about outputs.
Yeah, it's so true. I do find it, like, it's really interesting, because as we work with a lot of teams with DU, and I think sometimes I'm not always hyper convinced that the executive teams in some of the organizations I've worked with really understand the outcomes they're aiming for. And you know what? And then step it back. I don't know that they know what the outputs are that drive those outcomes.
Well, that's a huge problem, right? That's a huge problem. It was really funny. I was on a call yesterday with a long-term client. Love this client. And they're getting ready for their big employee rollout of their strategy. Great. Okay. So they have one and they literally have it labeled as the tactic is to increase growth for this product. I was like, that's a goal. Like,
Mm.
what are you going to do? And like,
Yeah.
I've been working with this guy for a long time and I'm
Yeah,
still
yeah,
having to ask the CEO the question, like, that's an outcome.
yeah,
That's a goal. Excellent. Good goal. Agreed.
yeah,
And what, like, if you go to your employees and tell them that your tactic for this business that's, having a painful decline, that your tactic is to increase growth,
yeah,
and you show that, like, you don't even understand the difference between a strategy, a tactic, and a goal, like,
yeah,
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 that's where
yeah,
we're at, Glain. That's
yeah.
where
It is. And so I think about like, so here you are, you're in the middle of the organization, you're a vice president, you think you're driving the right things, or you're at a senior manager, director level, and I just think about like so many people I work with are just getting so many things thrown at them in so many different directions. What's the strategy for managing up like that?
yeah,
What would you say people need to start thinking about doing to keep their own sanity and keep their team sanity? Like the number of people that I talk to that basically say, I've been acting as a shield for my team.
yeah,
Because the executive team, because hey, and look, I have a ton of empathy for executive teams.
yeah,
This world is bonkers right
yeah, yeah,
now.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
truly think people are doing the best they can, but
yeah,
they don't have a game plan. I think where I get a little bit antsy with executive teams or wiggly with them is that we have too many tropes in leadership that are around don't let them see you sweat and you're the leader and you should have all the answers and all of that BS. And so as a result of that, they're not really being as transparent as they should be about the fact that, you know what, guys, we think this is the direction, but we may need to pivot.
right,
And so when you start rolling it into the organization, people start taking that as the word of law
yeah,
and are following a path that then it changes up above and it feels like there's a lot of spin below. And I think also executive teams get too disconnected from the reality of how the work's going to get done, right? So you have a
yeah,
lot of VPs in our survey that said, it's the work, but it's how am I going to resource this work that's coming down? Whereas the people lower down were more like, how am I getting all like there's too many things coming at me and I don't even know
yeah,
what the priority is.
yeah.
So what do you do? What's your advice to people who are feeling that way right now? Like how do they create potentially boundaries or clarity that they need? Some
Yeah,
language, some
yeah,
approaches, what
I
would
think,
work?
the first metaphor you started with is like the manager being the shield. And
Mm-hmm.
yes, true, but we don't want the manager being insular,
Yeah.
right? You actually need to go be the, I don't even, like, I'm going to lose my quest metaphor here, but like you have to be the whatever you are, the sentry, the I don't know, where you actually the scout, where you go, maybe it's a scout, you go out up the levels of the organization, across the organization, to find out and ask the questions to frame up what matters here. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what is going to make the difference between this company surviving and not surviving? What are the existential questions?
Mm-hmm.
What are the outcomes we absolutely have to create? and
Mm-hmm.
and the more that you can understand that, then it's your job to say, okay, well, in my whatever, I run the brand marketing team, or I run the supply chain team, or I'm the chief information security officer. It's your job to then figure out, okay, if that's what's going on in the world, and these are the most existential important things that our company has to do, then I need to translate that. So you should be this some part like scout, understanding the environment, and sentry, understanding, kind of what the organization needs. And then this translator who can say,
Mm,
all right, if that's what matters, but it takes kahunas, because
yes.
sometimes you're going to be saying, look, I've done that work,
Yeah.
and I understand that this thing is more important than what you're asking me to do. So
Yeah.
you better be good at making that case for
Yeah.
why. And you might need to, it might be a side quest. You might need to devote some resources to it. You might need to like not nod to it, genuflect a little on that thing.
Yeah.
But if you truly understand what's existential for your organization, what absolutely has to be true, what outcomes you need to create, then you can take some arrows for a while you create the value and people will see at some point. If they don't, you don't belong in the organization. But that takes courage.
It takes courage. As I'm listening to you, that takes a lot of courage, and you've got to be willing in some ways to bet on yourself that you are making the right call around that, right? Jeff's got a question that I want to kind of call it. Thanks, Jeff, for throwing that in the chat for us. So when goal setting, how do you contend with the time horizon around the outcomes versus the output? When I think of an annual objective, oftentimes only doing the output, like finishing the project, implementing the system, is measurable in the year, but the output can only, I guess the outcome can only be really seen in the following year. So
I was dealing with this week, Jeff. Phenomenal question. So I think we have to be clear about, we're working with a company right now, a Silicon Valley company, and they're in a big turnaround, very big turnaround. They design semiconductors. So that like, these are multi-year projects to actually big R&D, like that kind of thing. And so defining the outcome is often, as you say, a longer term time horizon. But understanding what is the outcome. So if I take in the Silicon Valley world, in the hardware chip world, so, the outcome, what you're ultimately looking for is some kind of, so for example, like market share in the data center world, because that data center is where the market is exploding thanks to AI. We need to make sure our chips are really killing it in data center. Well, killing it in data center is like a 3-year outcome, but the outcome for this year is probably a data center product roadmap. The outcome for next year is probably the design wins. So in the tech world, you get design wins where you show your chip performs more effectively. So how do we understand the various outputs that, and some of those, a design win, because it's done externally, is an outcome, right? Yeah. So us taping out the chip, us shipping the chip or having it designed, that's an output. That's something we control. The design win is actually, because it's got to be a win over our competition, and we don't control that. So the design win is the first thing we're going for. That's really making sure our R&D and our product and our engineering organizations are delivering that outcome. The next outcome shifts to our go-to-market organization, right? So yeah, how do we define the ultimate lagging indicator outcome we're looking for, but how do we pull it in with some more proximal things? And it means in year one, some of your outcomes are going to be kind of the plan for the plan. And they're more outputs than outcomes. That's okay, because you're talking with everyone about what it's ultimately about. Ultimately, if we don't have share in the data center world, we're irrelevant 3 years from now, right? So everything has to add up to making sure we have sufficient share at X date. And that's in whatever, like that, if you sell soft drinks, right? Like we know that the soft drink world is changing very much, right? And so being in sugary drinks and winning in sugary drinks is winning in a smaller and smaller market. You may be saying the existential thing for our organization is being ready to capture market share that's just opening now. Create demand. Pharma is a great one for that. They have to actually create demand for things, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, understand where you're going in the time horizon that the outcome can happen, and then pull it in with things that are either outcomes or outputs on that track. It's a great question, Jeff. Yeah, it's really good.
That's a great question. Yeah, I think, it's funny. We had a speaker once at our one of our conferences that talked about this idea of stoking a fire. And so the analogy that he used at the time is that, and it was really more about like engagement, motivation, and how do you stay plugged into your job. And he talked about like in our careers, there's these big logs that come along, like you get the promotion, you get a pay increase, but those are sort of few and far between. So, if you're building a fire, you don't just throw big logs on it. You have to have the kindling, and the kindling is like the little wins. And I think sometimes like you've got these longer term outcomes, and it is about also what you're making me think of in a world where it can feel like you're spinning your wheels a lot, or you're in the mud and you're not making a lot of progress, which I think is very difficult for a lot of, certainly the people in our community. Like I can't speak to all leaders everywhere, but I know that people in our community are very driven to succeed. And when they feel like they're not making progress, and when you have a lot of ambiguity and a lot of things floating around you, that makes it hard to know, like, again, that was one of the things we found in our report, that people are like, the goalposts keep moving, and I'm very driven to get a win. So
Yeah.
how do I get beyond that? So I think what you make me think of is when we're leaders in this, what we're dealing with right now,
Yeah.
there's this importance to, yes, be really clear on the outcome, but then also like, how do you celebrate the outputs that are along the way that are going to get you to that outcome?
Yeah.
But don't confuse the two,
Yeah.
right? Like don't
Exactly.
and reevaluate as you're pivoting
Is
in
it
an
working?
organization as things change. It's okay to step back, because that I think is also the other Achilles heel of some of the people that we work with. They love the elbow crawl a little too much, right? So they don't know when to let go and back off of what was the goal. And so they keep going, and because it feels like failure. Oh, I said, but we said we were going to do these three things and we're going to keep doing it. And I think to myself, okay, but that's not, you got to then, it's almost like, what's the bigger outcome for you? What's the bigger outcome for your team?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And
Outside
I,
of the
I
work.
empathize with them because I realized I had a very, very painful cymbal crashing, like eureka moment of, oh crap. As I was writing the section in the book about the productivity trap, I was like, uh-oh, I'm stuck in it because
Yeah.
I
Tell
was
more.
so proud of myself for writing a blog every single week for 12 years and posting a YouTube video every week that I had just failed to think about, is that how people are consuming content anymore? Is that
Right?
working? Is that getting outcomes? So I was just so enamored of myself for this incredible productivity and dedication and hard work and consistency. Total crap, doing nothing, waste of effort. What am I doing?
Mm.
So I feel it. I get it for sure. It's probably worth also talking about. So we're talking about firefighting. We're talking about attention, the cognitive demands.
Mm-hmm.
But a huge, huge part of firefighting is our emotional dysregulation. So
Yeah.
we're calling everything a fire.
Yeah.
It's just frightening. And so we are constantly monitoring, looking for a fire, looking for smoke, looking for anything, right? And that makes us anxious. It really makes us neurotic. It's really, really, really problematic. And we have to think not just about the cognitive demands, but the emotional burden of what we're doing. And I was giving a talk out in Alberta and talking about how you need to close your email for chunks of 2 hours, like in the morning and the afternoon. Like you need to actually close the program, close Teams, close Slack, like turn everything off and do focused work. And this was an energy company. And one of the guys in the audience kind of puts up his hand and in his like yeah way, he's like, well, that might be fine for all these other unimportant people in the room, but I run our energy like our power generation plants, so it's like high stakes. It's very, very, I'm a very important person, and there's safety issues and whatever, and like something could go wrong in a plant. And so I tried to stay calm, which is good for me. And I just said, so if a power plant exploded, would they notify you by email? And he just kind of was like, yeah, probably not. I'm like, right. So close your freaking email, because you're going to be triggered by all the stuff in your email.
Yeah.
None of which is going to be that your power plant has exploded. I'm pretty sure somebody's going to phone if that happens. Leave your ringer on. That's okay. But turn off your email. And we are so dysregulated, so anxious. So we talk about, most people know about fight or flight, right? We use that expression all the time, that when our brain says we're not safe, we either kind of like, or we get out. People talk also about freeze, fight, flight, freeze. The one that's newer that we're understanding more is fawn. And of course, we've chosen a not great word just to make it an F. Bless us. It's either a psychologist or a consultant involved here, because the fourth,
and there's probably probably a 4 quad grid around it.
Oh,
as
a
well.
2x2 of it. You're so
2x2, yeah.
So, but fawn is, if you have a dog and your dog plays submissive at the dog park, just immediately rolls over on its back and says, "Don't hurt me, don't hurt me, don't hurt me." That's what fawn is. And I think what's happening for many of us, because we're so emotionally dysregulated, is we're fawning. We're saying yes to everything. Like,
Yes.
of course I'll do that. I want you to like me. Don't hurt me. Like,
Yeah.
and we're taking on stuff that does not make sense to take on because we have imposter syndrome, or we're perfectionists, or we want to be
Yeah.
liked, or we're afraid of being fired, or like
Yeah.
whatever else. So
Yeah.
beware of the fawn response happening. It's a result of an emotional trigger. It's partly because you're just paying attention to too many things, and your brain is not effectively assessing what's an actual threat versus something that, like, what's a fire versus just like smoke or whatever else. And we're not calibrated anymore. So we're not. And then, so if we add the third piece of the treacherous triad of thought load in, the energy reserves, as Craig taught me, it's so sad. But as your energy reserves go down because you didn't sleep well last night, or you had the second or third glass of wine to help you get to sleep, which meant you were up at 2 a.m, or whatever, you're running on that banana nut muffin 6 hours later, whatever it is, the first thing to go, your frontal lobe goes offline.
Yeah.
And the first thing to go is your ability to calibrate what you should pay attention to and what you shouldn't. And the second thing to go is your ability to know, is this actually a threat or not? So the top of the thought load equation gets bigger and bigger and bigger as the bottom gets smaller, and around we go. So we have to manage thought load as a system. So as a manager, how am I making sure my team understands their quest?
Yeah.
And that we're aligning our time and our energy and our resources with that quest. But how do I also understand what's going on emotionally? What's the hijack that's happening? And as a manager, to have the courage and the skill to not try the age-old strategy of, this is business, not personal. Or there's no crying in baseball, or whatever awesome thing, instead of invalidating it and trying to just move past it because you don't have time for it. To actually have the courage and the skills to say, I need to help you process this emotion, because that's the only way we're getting to the other side of it. So processing it so that it doesn't like stop you in your tracks, and so it doesn't spread to everybody else on your team. And then also thinking about my team's energy, more sprints and rest. More chance, like, let's go hard on this for 2 weeks, and then let's stop and reflect and see what's worked, and have a day to clean out your inbox and do whatever else. Then let's sprint again. We're not doing best practice in any of those things. And one of the metaphors that really helpful for me right now, you're seeing all of the Olympic stuff, all the teams being announced and the cool Olympic flag and all that. And I think Olympians are the best at managing thought load of anybody out there. So they're going into this cycle right now. You can be assured their cognitive demands are being restricted. They're not having to think about anything. They're the team, the podium people are making
they're in the bubble.
They're not paying attention to anything other than they are dealing with their emotional burdens all day, every day. They have sports psychologists. If they fell on their triple lutz at the world championship, they have people helping them drop that baggage, like whatever else it is. And everything is about managing their energy so that it peaks on the day and the hour that they need it to for their performance. Olympic athletes are thought load. They are exquisite at managing thought load. We need to be inspired by them, and to understand high performance comes from that kind of rigor in managing thought load. We can't go as far as they can because our world has got more demands, but I think we need to be inspired by it at least. What's the most important thing I need to be paying attention to right now? What's the emotional reaction I'm having that I have to deal with and work through? And how do I rest and restore? I talk about in the book, I talk about finding energy from both waterfalls and wells. Where is the energy just come easily? Where do I have to dig for it? And then how do I fix the leaks in my cup? Because that's a big problem. So I'm going to be inspired by all these Olympic athletes who know a lot about managing thought load.
Well, and I think, I'm listening to you, I think there's principles, right? Like that. And I think about like Tony Schwartz, who has the very unfortunate, career background of helping Donald Trump write The Art of the Deal. He was the actual writer of that book, but he has his company is the Energy Project, and years ago he wrote an article called The Corporate Athlete, and I think what you make me think about it's a great article, and the Energy Project, I love their work because he really focuses on that recovery, because I think I think the thing that I see, and I think this is where the courage, wrapping back to this idea of courage, right? As a leader, we have to have courage as a leader. And look at, I live this every day. I think I put a post on LinkedIn. Those of you who follow me on LinkedIn, I had me a couple, like last year, I was in the business, not on the business. I have never been as burnt out personally. I think my team, members of my team, did not get the support they needed because I was so busy in the weeds of the work. And I know better. Like, I know better. I work with people all the time on this stuff. It is so easy these days to get pulled into that. And I think that, the elements that you talk about, right? It's like athletes are not training every single day. You simply cannot do that. They surround themselves with support. They carve out the time to do the mental work. They have the rest and recovery.
They have
right?
ice pants.
Yeah.
And they don't call it self-care. Like
no.
we've had this sort of derisive term of like self-care. I'm like, no, they have ice pants. But
no.
that's where like, right?
Yeah. And I feel like in the entrepreneurial community, like when I switched out of being, working for somebody to working for myself, and I'm very embedded in the entrepreneurial community. The thing about being an entrepreneur is you can be on 24/7, and there are entrepreneurs that do that, and they wear it like a badge of honor in the entrepreneurial community, this hustle mentality, and that they've never taken a vacation in 10 years. I call BS on that. Then you're a dumb entrepreneur. And I feel this way about a leader. If you can't go on vacation for 2 weeks and turn off your laptop and not be available to your team and be checking your email every day, then you need to be doing some work on your team. You need to be doing some work on yourself, but you need to be doing some work on your team. You need to unplug and recover and rest, right? So I think, and again, I'm curious your views on this. Like, I think people think about that strategic work of working on themselves, carving out time to have a coach, to do whatever, working on their team, pulling the team out. Like when you say sprint and then recovering that, how many people have those scheduled, forced? Like, we're not talking about the weeds of the day to day. We're going to talk about how our team's operating, what we need to do better, what's working, what's not working. Like, talk to us about that and how you sort of see leaders missing those opportunities potentially.
Yeah. And what happens is your brain goes into just routine and default.
Yes.
Right. And so if you think the way you manage your team in 2025, which is probably the way you manage your team in 2018, if you think that that's going to be fit for purpose for what's going down in 2026, I'd love to hear about what you do because I can't think of an industry where that's the case, right? So if you do not give your frontal lobe a chance to come online, to actually imagine and explore what's different and how you need to respond differently, then you are doing a huge disservice to your business and your team and everybody else, right? So, but if you are just in the business all the time, and the other thing I see is that often teams that I work with, and I only work with executive teams, but teams that I work with, they have like one kind of meeting, like they meet whatever, like once a week from 2 to 5, or once a month for a full day or whatever else. And that's it. That's the vessel. And everything they have to talk about has to go in that vessel. Well, what we know about your brain is it's really not good at going from a strategic horizon, the vibe of like big generative blue ocean thinking, to like tactical, what are we going to do with this, customer who's complaining? And that's what we do, is we put it all in the same vessel. And it's like, as a kid, when you try and mix all the pretty colors together and all you get is like
mud,
like this horrible color. It's the same with your thinking when you do that. So when we do it, and I wrote an article for Harvard Business Review about getting your meeting structure fixed in a way that's conducive to thought load. So what are your operational huddles? So working in the business. When I ran a big team in consulting, we needed a huddle. It was a 30-minute huddle. I did it in a room with no chairs because you can bet you're going to keep that nice and tight if everybody's standing. It was great. And it created a feel. What do we need to know so that we can go our separate ways and make good decisions all week? We started every Monday with a huddle. It's a very in the business thing. Then you need a working on the business thing, which is, I think about it with a few goals. What are the things we need to do to increase the capability, the capacity, the resilience, or the agility of our organization to do the business we're trying to do today? That needs more time, more oxygen, more productive conflict. It needs a totally different feel. You can't put
Yeah.
those two things in the same meeting.
Yeah.
And you probably should have chairs for that one. And then we have this third one, which is a horizon that we just don't go to often enough, which is, how do we need to transform the business? How do we need to be something different in response or proactively to what's happening in the external environment? Those are three completely different brain processes. They should have different durations. They should have different frequencies. They should have different participants. They should have different agenda. They should have totally different vibes.
Mm-hmm.
But and that's how our brain brings our thought load down. This is what we're solving for here.
Yeah.
And so good meeting structure that supports effective thought load is something most of us don't have. It's another great place you can start, especially this time of year. Let's get our meeting structure into these three buckets so that we actually are in the right mode
Yeah.
for the kind of thinking that we need to do. And I think separating, I call the middle one the business builder. How do we make the current organization better at doing what we need to do? Separating that from this different question, which is, how do we need to totally change the business from what it is today? And when I say business, you have to be the CEO. It could be the business of supply chain or whatever else. But that middle category is often missing. We have sort of operational and strategic, and we don't have that middle category. So how do we actually have these three categories, lower our thought load by being super focused and clear on what's needed from us in kind of each of them?
Yeah, I think that's so key. Like, I think it's so key. And I think if you're looking, those of you listening, I know Liane's got a ton of resources. Another great resource is Pat Lencioni's Death by Meetings book. Great one to get you to assess what kinds of meetings you need and the focus of those meetings so that you can get a little bit more focused. I see Liane has popped a couple of questions in there. And so one of hers is to, looking for some suggestions for leaders in an operational setting on, I guess, how to manage all of the workload that's coming at them and who need time to focus on emails. And then she has a follow-up question there around CEOs that are really good at handling the three things that we just talked about. So
okay, just let me look at the first
share?
question. Suggestions for leaders who may be in an operational setting and also strategize and need time to focus on those emails. Yeah, so I in the book I talk about 3 calendar slots. Focus and forge time. That's your prime calendar real estate. For me, that's mornings, right? I'm a morning person. 7:30 to about 11 is my focus and forge time. Second, collaborate and connect time. That's my time where I can be doing things with other people, for other people, that sort of thing. And third, tidy and tend time, which is like, I got to clean up a bunch of stuff or whatever. Yeah. So looking at your calendar and as best as possible, slotting your quests into the focus and forge time, slotting those ways you need to support other people's quests into connect and collaborate time, and then slotting the side quests into that tidy and tend time. When you are in one of the first 2 kinds of blocks, the email is closed. But that means you better have time scheduled in your calendar, first thing in the morning, right before lunch, right after lunch, before the end of day, where that is your primary focus, is what do people need from me? Either because they need me to do something to help with their quest, or because maybe it's on your quest, maybe it's a client or something like that, or there's a tidy and tend thing I have to cope with. But what happens is we just tend to have 3 criteria we use right now for what we do next, which is, what was the most recent thing to come across my desk? So either what's the latest email and I just respond to that, or who was the person who came and wedged their right butt cheek on my desk, and so we spend time with them. So one is just recency, like who's there. Second, and people might relate to this, we do the thing attached to the scariest person. So this is the person who's going to yell at me. This is the person this is the person who's been bugging me. We do that, or we do the one that feels good, that we like, that's easy.
Yeah,
these are terrible prioritization strategies that tend to make our thought load much higher and are a big problem. So get your calendar aligned, know your quests, other people's quests, and your side quests. Understand what's your focus and forge time, what's your collaborate and connect time, and what's your tidy and tend time, and then actually turn off things and put email and Slack and Teams and all those other things into different time. If the power plant is exploding, tell them to phone you. You'll pick up the phone. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that though is also so key. You have to train other people. And if you've built a reputation and brand for yourself internally of being the person who responds to everything in an instant, and if you're going to change your way of working, well, then you are going to need to train people around you, right, on what that needs to look like for yourself.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. And being clear, like for me, email is a 4-time-a-day thing. If that's okay, if it's something that I can at least give you an answer by end of day, it may not be that I've given you the deliverable you need, but I can answer you by the end of the day. Great. Send it by email. But if for some reason you believe that it's urgent for me, not just for you, and something you need me, then text me, phone me. So we need a triage system that matches the importance and urgency of the communication to different communication channels, instead of just like the thing that like is flashing up, which may be completely unimportant, or it's like an email that's like everybody was CC'd his email, like, thanks for that. And you're like, wow, I'm so glad I distracted my attention from curing cancer to look at this email that says thanks for that, right? Yeah, but that's where we're at, right? What was the second question?
Yous.
The CEO?
Yeah, you know what I was going to say? I think we're at like 4 minutes to the top of the hour.
Sorry.
So I am going to give you the last word on, what do you want? Like everybody who's here, what's something that you would encourage them to experiment with over maybe the next 30 days that would help them decrease thought load? Like a couple of tactics for people that they could try and do.
I would just do that first one we talked about. Like, carve out an hour for yourself to figure out, like, what is your team's quest? What's the single most important thing? What are the top 3 other quests in the organization that you need to make sure are successful? And do that. And then I would say the second one is just implement this communication triage thing. Try it. So email off for everybody, Slack off, Teams off for a chunk, a blackout period in the morning and a blackout period in the afternoon. Try it and see how much. But what you're going to find is that people aren't able to do it at first. So you're going to say that you have permission to turn off your email, and people are going to be like, the average person only goes 5 minutes without opening their email. So that's where it's like, when you say, is it an external or an internal? I want you as the leader to take away the external need for that level of distraction. Then what's going to be clear is that people are jonesing for it. They're addicted to it. And then you're going to have to do a bunch to support that. But I would say start there, because you're not going to stop being emotionally triggered, and you're not going to conserve your energy until you manage your attention. Start with attention.
Yeah, start with attention. I love that. Like, it's control the controllables, right? And that is something that is within your control. And like a tool, like if anybody is looking for one of the tools that I used to use, and I'm getting myself back into it. It's a book called The Productivity Planner, and it's all around that Pomodoro method of working in 20-minute sprints. That thing was a life changer for me when I was really using it diligently, and I realized I need to get myself back to it, because it really grounds you in what is most important for me to accomplish this week. What am I going to start on today? And how am I going to work in these very focused blocks of 20 minutes of time? So 20 minutes of time, and then I can check my email. But I think there's tools out there that are also like that can really help if you're somebody like me who can easily get distracted.
So I would say, just like your trainers trying to take your strength up and whatever, I would say like even 20 minutes and then check your email, too short.
Yeah. You think too short, hey?
Too short. Do 20 minutes and then put on a fun song and dance around the office for 3 minutes, and then go back and do another.
Back to the focus work.
It's 20 minutes to come back if anything emotionally hijacks you in that email.
Yeah.
And again, if it was urgent, they've phoned you.
Yeah.
If you've done this process.
Right? Yeah. I always said that to people in our sessions. I'm like, okay, if your company's going under, like, we've got bigger problems here. You can spend 2 hours or 3 hours with me. You're going to be okay. All right. Well, listen, we got to wrap it. Liane, I could talk for you for another 3 hours. Everybody, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks, everyone.
And here's where you can find Liane. She has tons of tools and resources on her website. And so make sure that you check them out.
ThoughtLoad is available for pre-order already. So
amazing. And for those of you interested in our report, you can go to the website, download it directly from there. That'll tell you a little bit about the mind's high potentials and frankly, how we are our own worst enemy, I will say, when it comes to ThoughtLoad. I think big problem for hypos. If you have somebody on your team who is at a director, early VP level, who could use some thought load relief, I think the Roundtable program is a great thought load reliever. We are enrolling right now for our spring session. And then next month, I'm with my dear friend Maria Brown from our research partner management research group. And we're going to talk about how leadership development and really the motivations of leaders are changing as we look at Gen Z coming into the workforce and what that's going to mean in terms of retaining your next hypo talent in that Gen Z pool. Really interesting material coming out of MRG. So thank you all for today. Enjoy the snow, if we can say that, and we'll see you next month, those of you who want to come back for that one. And thank you again, Liane, for being with us today.
thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thanks.
Bye.
Bye.